Good morning. Uh, Thanks to the Rudy Bruner Center for bringing us all together, to the University of Buffalo, my SUNY colleagues, to Conrad and Bob and all of their colleagues for doing the hard work of setting this whole weekend up. So when I got Conrad's invitation to participate in this event, I said to myself, this must be a mistake. I don't write about place, and I've rarely used the term placemaking in anything I write. So this, like, why, what do I have to say about place? And then I said, wait a minute. Um, I didn't realize that I would be particularly well placed in the program in terms of Tim's ideas and Joyce's focus on older people. But I thought, write about places all the time, right? I'm an urbanist. I write about places. So why don't I try to take place in a very personal way? Like what does place mean to me? And besides, this was a way for me to come to a place that I've never been to before. So I'm thinking, yeah, what do I know about Buffalo, this place? Right? Wings and Silo City. I mean, wow, what a tremendous opportunity. And I said to myself, wait a minute. Oh, suppose this photograph of or etching, whatever, of grain elevators reminds me of Bert and Hilla Bescher's photographs of grain elevators. So maybe I'm thinking about a different place. When I'm thinking of their photographs, I'm thinking about Germany or France, somewhere in Europe. And wings. Suppose I tasted buffalo wings at a dive bar in Brooklyn. Now, what places does that phrase evoke? Bars, dive bars, and Brooklyn. Okay, so already I'm thinking place is a real problem for me. And then I'm thinking, okay, let's stop the subjectivity. Let's go to something objective. Of course, geographers and cartographers know that maps are not objective. But anyway, let's go to something objective that has GIS coordinates. I can find Buffalo on the map. And I can see that Buffalo is printed in smaller, not only not caps, the way state names are in caps, but it's in smaller letters than some other places like New York City, right? But this is a view from outside. Suppose another map maker is thinking about the politics, the electoral politics, Buffalo, and decides to represent Buffalo in terms of city council districts. So there are all different ways of representing the place of Buffalo. So whose perspective should we take? I mean, I'm going to take my perspective. And this is, a photo that I took a few weeks ago. I have to confess, though, my office is on the interior of the building. I do not have any windows, but that is my office. That is, right across the street from the Empire State Building. And so that's unavoidably my perspective on Buffalo. So, along with what everybody else has said so far, including the dean, who presented a brilliant one-sentence definition of place that precludes everything else that we're going to say today. Um, place can be defined in these ways, but as Joyce reminds us, we mustn't forget that our perspective is built into our concept of place and the way we approach creating a place or stigmatizing, destroying, remaking a place. I mean, think of the two of the biggest place-making experiences in the US and some other countries, but primarily the US during the 20th century. The two G words, ghettoization and gentrification. They prime examples of perspective. So for me, thinking about place in the sense of a personal as well as a professional journey, place can be a concept. Place can also must also be explored in terms of a larger context. And forgive my personal self-promotion here, but I think of the first uh, urban book I wrote, my introduction to urban research as well as to research on New York, which I published more than 40 years ago. And the last book that I published 4 years ago. Um, Loft living is, according to the author, me, loft living is about a real it's about a real estate market, and it's about the way a particular kind of built space, a manufacturing loft, became a hot, very popularized model of a residential real estate market. For everybody who has read the book, that is, the readers who co-create the meaning of the book, it's a book about Soho. The photograph that's on the latest edition of that book is a photo I took in Soho. Um, in other words, it's a book about one neighborhood or a few neighborhoods in Manhattan. Um, the last book is about a concept as well as a real place. And I'm going to have the very real treat of being taken to Buffalo's Innovation District tomorrow. But I wrote it about the emergence of a new economy in a place that did not have very much of that tech economy before. And the representation I chose for this concept of innovation complex is a fabricated representation by an African artist. But I thought that that represented the concept that many people have of an innovation district. So these two covers sum up my journey to thinking about place with you today. So as a concept, we have a definition. I mean, almost a dictionary definition, if we still use the word dictionary these days. A dictionary definition that has to do with the form, how that form of the space fits into a grander typology. What the typology and the form have to do with specific geographical and political economic locations and historical locations. And then, of course, as someone has already mentioned, there's the issue built into the concept of place of scale. Is it your bedroom, as Tim said, or is it a public park? Is your house is a public park? Is it a neighborhood? Is it a city? And I guess I've written not about my bedroom, but I've written about a lot of those places. This picture that I took when visiting Industry City, which is a repurposed large industrial warehouse complex on the Brooklyn waterfront, is I think a terrific representation of both the concept and the physical reality of a lot of innovation districts, where they have a coffee bar and they have a set of restaurants and gathering spaces where people can circulate ideas and exchange ideas, or as the specialized language puts it, transfer knowledge. Those are all, a part and parcel of innovation districts. I actually thought of the phrase innovation complex when I visited one, sort of like Industry City, in Shanghai. And when I was looking around, it was still a construction site, but when I was looking around at the old buildings that were being refurbished and the espresso machine moving into the espresso bar and the various co-working spaces that were being built, I said to myself, what can I call this? It reminded me very much of the neighborhood, and even though it didn't look anything like it, it reminded me of the neighborhood of Dumbo in Brooklyn, which has become a de facto innovation district, as you will see in a few slides. And I said to myself, you can only call this an innovation complex with all of the ideological, political, economic, and conceptual baggage that questions that arouses. Oops. But there's also a context in which places are created and exist. And you have to include all of these hard factors and historical factors in thinking about place, but also the discursive investments that people make in creating the concept of a place. For example, the concept of the Brooklyn Tech Triangle. So it both does and does not exist. This is a part of Brooklyn. It was drawn by architects and planners in a really terrific studio in New York City. And it was created as a marketing idea to market the real estate of one part of this area, which no one thought about at the time, or very few people thought about at the time in terms of digital technology or the tech industry. And that was the part of the leg of the triangle that involves downtown Brooklyn, which has been remade around the engineering school of New York University and their research labs and other universities that have campuses in downtown Brooklyn. But the other two legs of the triangle, Dumbo and the Brooklyn Navy Yard, really had emerged in the 1990s and early 2000s as workplaces for tech companies, not under any kind of state-induced planning, but sort of ground up and with the help of um, a public sector and a private sector real estate developer. But Brooklyn Tech Triangle became a very powerful discursive tool to raise money and interest to benefit those parts of Brooklyn, which, by the way, is I think it's the second fastest grow outside Silicon Valley. It's outside, excluding Silicon Valley. It's the fastest growing tech district or innovation district in the U.S. And then, of course, once you get a name like Innovation District, you have people, professionally and commercially trying to profit from that. So you have you have a whole diffusion of innovation districts around the world. That's from the website of Sasaki in Cambridge. But context is really complicated. I mean, that's how I can do my work. I mean, that's how I've written those two books, by exploring all the different parts of the context of place creation and place disinvestment, place destruction. These are the sorts of things that I write about, not primarily the design, and the design I have kind of surreptitiously built into aesthetics there, but aesthetics for a sociologist may more pointedly refer to the way a place looks that allows you to make inferences about who uses it, whom it's intended for in terms of class, race, gender, and age. But we know context changes over time, so that even I have changed over time, so that earlier I wrote a book about a real estate market called Loft Living and insisted it was not about Soho. But now I'm making a documentary film about Soho that incorporates everything that has happened there during the past 40 years. But Soho would not have existed as a set of old industrial buildings repurposed first for artist studios and then for luxury residences, offices, and a lot of retail stores, if the Cross Manhattan Expressway, the Lower Manhattan Expressway, had actually been built. It was planned, and I think this diagram dates from the original proposal. It was planned from 1929 or 1930. And because of the Great Depression, World War II, various political difficulties, it was not really pushed into prominence by Robert Moses until the 1950s and early 1960s. I know Robert Moses is a well-known name in Buffalo also. But for reasons that have to do with community opposition across Manhattan, from ethnic, low income, and intellectual as well as artistic groups, the plan was delayed in the early 60s. Jane Jacobs was involved in that early 1960s protest, but then she moved to Toronto and Moses kept pushing the plan so that it reemerged in strength at the end of the 1960s. By that time, the same coalition of community groups and a much more influential groups of artists and different changing political situation in New York City, that made opposition much more potent, and that expressway was never built. So that these days, the local business improvement district puts up a sign that says, Robert Moses wanted to build a highway here. But look, we did. And that's the business improvement district that is boasting about the success of opposing a place destroying, different place building proposition. This photo was taken on a Sunday morning, which is just about the only time when there are very few people on the street in Soho. So the materiality of the place changes, as I suggested. The makeshift DIY renovation of homes has changed to a very professional, very expensive proposition. And I emphasize this particular building where Penthouse A was on sale a while back. I emphasize this particular building because 420 West Broadway was the epicenter in the 1970s of the emergence of Soho and growth of Soho as the capital of the world art market in contemporary art. 420 was just the number 420 was famous throughout the world, and now it has become a residential building like any other in the neighborhood. And the representations of Soho have changed. Just to think of public art in one particular spot in Soho, the photo on the left is the same place that you can see on the left side of the photo on the right. So we move from a public art project by a local artist to an advertisement for a global luxury brand, one of a pair of advertisements, giant advertisements for global luxury brands. Very much a representation of a lot of the retail stores in Soho now. So what I began to think about during the 1980s was a conceptual opposition between market representing forces for change, a lot of them for profit change, and place as a concept like home, like local, that represents an aspiration for stability, an aspiration to prevent change unless it's an improvement of the existing condition for the existing population. This is actually something I wrote about in another book, Landscapes of Power, but I will spare you that. So what I wind up bringing to you today is this idea for maybe the rest of the discussion that place is never stable. And our representations of place reflect the constant change. Even if we look at something from different perspectives, like look at Buffalo from the perspective of my office, it's an unstable thing. Place is never stable, and various people have tried to come up with their major concept, their dominant theme or explanation for why place is always being destabilized. Instead of saying place is unstable, let me unsettle that and make that a dynamic process. Place is always being destabilized. And I certainly thought of that when I had the great opportunity this year to visit Venice and go to the Biennale of art there, whose theme was chosen to be foreigners everywhere. That has particular resonance in Italy, in Europe, but definitely everywhere. if you go anywhere outside your home, in your neighborhood, that's the picture on the left in my neighborhood, or you travel to Italy, you are constantly seeing the disruption and remaking of place. Or if you travel anywhere or read anything about tourism, you are the enemy, right? You are creating the pressure of change. If you rent an Airbnb apartment, if you even go to an area that is publicized, in all the numerous travel narratives that we can consume these days, you are destroying place. But some of the representations, many of the representations in the Biennale of Art in Venice this year depicted the way places destabilized at the bottom, right, for the people who have no choice, whose choice is taken away from them, even though the choice might have been limited to begin with. So I leave you with the question: can we ever have only one concept of place when the context is constantly changing and there are so many contexts? So thank you.